Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Plus. It's a sigh of relief for Go First. The National Company Law Tribunal, NCLT, has admitted application filed by Go First Airlines seeking initiation of voluntary insolvency proceedings. Now, Go Airlines moved the NCLT earlier this month to initiate the corporate insolvency process. Remember, Go First blamed the faulty engine supplied by American company Pratt & Whitney for the grounding of its aircraft. The company claimed to have lost over 10,800 crores owing to the fact that 50% of its fleet was grounded as of April 2023. Now, a two-member NCLT bench appointed Abhilash Lal as an interim resolution professional, IPR, to run the debt-ridden company. It has also put the company under full moratorium. Now, NCLT also asked to ensure that no employee is retrenched, nobody is sacked, and the entire workforce of Go Airline, in fact, stays intact. Now, on the show today, we are discussing the future of Go First and the aviation sector at large. Joining us at this point in time is Minoo Wadia, who is the founder president of Federation of Indian Pilots and former advisor to Jay Wadia, who was the managing director of Go First. Also with me at this point in time in the studio is my colleague Karthik Malhotra. Joining us also is Dheeraj Mathur, aviation expert. Gentlemen, appreciate you taking your time out. Minoo, I want to come to you directly and ask you, what's the future of Go Airlines looking like as of today?
Many years, I didn't think Go Airways really had a very good future for various reasons. If most people ask today, this is a happy situation, as you announced earlier with NCLT. In my opinion, NCLT should have been the last resort and not the first resort for Go Airways. Because I am directly involved in another NCLT issue of, if you've heard of Lavasa, which is also in NCLT. And I can assure you it's not a good experience going into the NCLT, and the process is not what it seems on paper. But as far as Go, let's focus on that. I'll talk about Go and other airlines also in similar states. See, most of the airlines which have been started by owners for whatever reasons they have had. But the owners have never been or hardly ever been the aviators themselves, or having a passion for aviation, or the knowledge of aviation. That is the main reason the owners, you may hire a CEO, you may hire a managing director, but if the owners don't have the understanding of running an airline efficiently and profitably, no airline has a future. You've seen so many cases, this is not the first airline which has gone into a problem. There were other owners, without naming them also. There are so many in India who have had the same grave they've gone through, mainly, essentially, because the owners did not understand. If you want an example, take the Air India itself. When Air India was owned by J.R.D. Tata, who had a passion for aviation, he was an aviator who understood aviation himself. Air India was one of the finest airlines in the world. When the owners became the government of India, who understood nothing about aviation, ever, that's when Air India became what it was and the state at which it became. So the knowledge and commitment of the owners matters a lot. Not blaming the CEOs or the situation. Yes, the engine may have been a problem, but didn't they foresee this problem earlier? So these are the essential things why airlines have a problem running in India.
Mm-hmm. In fact, if you talk to the management, and on the basis of what the management has been saying, that we were dealing with Pratt & Whitney for a while, we've taken them to arbitration. It was in fact Pratt & Whitney that did not honor the award of arbitration. We had raised this multiple times over the last few years, so we've done our best. So the blame squarely lies with Pratt & Whitney.
Well, of course, they will blame someone or the other who's responsible for the state. They will not blame themselves. But when you're saying the owners, please tell me who are you talking about? Who are the owners today?
Okay.
See, Jay Wadia himself was the managing director at one point of time. And at that time, there was no... I was in Go only for a very brief period because the age of flying was extended to 65 years. So the last 1.5 years or so, I flew with Go. And I really managed or really ran the airline. But the management, the owners did not understand fundamentals of aviation. And there was no CEO, there was no senior person to run the airline. And without anyone having control of the airline, you're bound to go haywire.
And when it comes to the process of insolvency and bankruptcy, one of the questions that comes to our mind is, why did it had to go through insolvency in the first place? Did the promoters refuse to infuse fresh capital? We know that they have been infusing capital every now and then, but is there a sense that the promoters refused to infuse fresh capital, and hence financial viability of the airline was put in question, and therefore the need to go into insolvency? Lack of commitment, therefore, from the promoter's side at this point?
Financial problems are there in any case, but that is not the only thing. The understanding of how the airline is supposed to be, even if someone had pumped in a lot of money also, it's just not the money itself, it's how to use that money, how it is. See, the airlines is a very technical field. It's not like any business. You have to understand aviation in totality, utilization of aircraft, utilization of crew, how the public PR, etc. And Go Airlines, you've never really, that's why I asked you the question, who's the management? Go has never had a good a management at all, in fact, I would say.
These are harsh statements you're making, Mr. Wadia, and I'm not sure, how well the Wadia group is going to receive these statements. But
I am a Wadia myself.
Of course. So namesake there. But just to understand from you, do you think specifically the problem was in the lack of enforcement or watertight contracting when the engines were being negotiated by Pratt and Whitney? Because if that was not the case, and that is where I assume the experience that you're talking about comes into play, of understanding and anticipating challenges that can spring up. But had those contracts been watertight and had those contracts been honored even by the US engine maker, would Go Air have been in this, would Go First have been in this position today, with it actually being, until it declared insolvency and went to NCLT, the fourth largest airline in India, in operation for 18 years and doing a record of what, 450,000 passengers 2-3 days before filing for insolvency?
Yeah, I agree with you totally. You're
Because the
damn
management
right
is the same, sir.
Yeah, let us focus on now the Pratt and Whitney. And now Pratt and Whitney is not a fly-by-night, overnight company. It's a company that has had good engines with a good track record for many, many years. And therefore, what you said is absolutely right. You should have understood the specific problems of the airline, how they could implement it. And you can understand and go with that only if you yourself understand the intricacies of aviation. And I have known and dealt with Pratt and Whitney also earlier. And in this particular case, if they've not honored the agreement, of course, the Wadias are perfectly right in taking action against them. But I am not familiar with that part of the story, so I will not even comment on that.
So you're saying for 18 years, the management has not understood the aviation business? Is that what you're actually alluding to? 18 years is not work experience for anybody.
You're using the word management. I'm using the word, the same thing differently, the owners. And see, when management can be just the CEO also, the managing director also. Right. When Jay Wadia, unfortunately, he himself didn't understand too much about aviation. And he was surrounded for many years, right from the initial stages, by a few sycophants who misguided him, or he listened to them. But he was never prepared to listen to very high qualified professionals, etc. So just to give an example, since I've spent 46 years in aviation, and I've had a vast experience before coming to Joe. Normally people go up the ladder. I came from top of the ladder to below the small aircraft, and we were just to pass our time for since our age was extended to 65 years. And I virtually ran the airline, taking all decisions or small decisions or solving internal problems. But you needed to have a strong person right at the top, officially a managing director, CEO, to take these decisions and run the airline. And I have seen, at least during the brief period that I was there, that there was no one in control of the airline.
So what prompted you to leave the airline? Mr. Wadia, what prompted you to leave the airline?
I am from the armed forces. And then I flew for many years with Air India.
Okay.
And I retired from Air India because at that time the age was 60 of our license. My license had expired, and I did a lot of things in aviation, not just flying. I've put a lot of things. Aviation safety and standards has been my passion. So I've been involved nationally and internationally also.
Okay.
So at the
So I
last
think
again,
the question that my colleague here is alluding to, what prompted you to leave the airline? And if we are to understand what you're saying here is, till the time you were there, the airline was in fact fully functional and making money in operation for last 18 years. And you're blaming not just the current management, and by management I mean the people who are running the airline, as well as the promoter group for mismanaging.
specifically answering your specific question, why did I leave the airline? Because that was the age I was allowed to fly. 65, my license expired. Once my license expired, I was not allowed to fly. So therefore, I was no more with Go Airways. Obviously, the license was valid till I was 65, and after that, I wasn't allowed to fly.
Are there similarities that you can draw with what is happening in Go First right now with what we saw 4 years ago happening with Jet Airways? Was
Not
the
only
case,
Jet, yeah.
apart from faulty engines, was management the challenge even with Jet Airways in your opinion?
Oh yes, oh yes. Though Naresh Goel himself was from the not directly involved with the aviation, but he was from travel agency, etc., etc. So he understood, and I have interacted with him also to quite an extent. Uh, but all of them, not only Jet Airways, take all the other airlines that have packed up also. The similar problem was there with most of them. Management not understanding the aviation industry as they should have understood.
Okay.
Mr. Kaushik Khona is not going to be very happy listening to you.
Facts are facts.
You don't seem to have any qualms about that.
So I think let's put the issue of management.
You probably don't know my background. I've been.
Yes, sir. Please continue.
I think there's a problem with
No,
the line.
what I'm saying is I've been involved with aviation standards, not only in India, but internationally also. I'm the India director for IFAL, that's the world body of pilots. I'm the founder president of the Federation of Indian Pilots. Plus, I've started an institute for education and training, as the Institute of Aviation and Aviation Safety. Plus, government appointed various panels also, and done a lot of things in aviation from the safety point of view. Vijaypat Singhania's world record in the hot air balloon altitude record, and government appointed committees, etc. So
Okay.
I have been involved in not only just flying, but in a lot of things directly with aviation.
Okay. I think let's put the issue of management aside for now, and let's look at this NCLT order which has come in. And why, for the management, whether the management is in the right or the wrong, as Mr. Wadia is alluding to, I think what really happens now is, for the foreseeable future, Go First is in a state of coma. Obviously, the fleet is grounded. They are not taking any more flight bookings. All scheduled flights stand cancelled. But I think the glimmer of hope for the management is the fact that it is right now under moratorium, which means the liabilities that it had to its debtors and its creditors, as well as the lessors who technically own the aircraft and have leased the aircraft to Go First. The lessors don't have any right over the aircraft right now until the moratorium is lifted and until the proceedings are over. Which means, there were talks 2-3 days ago, Shweta, if you remember, where SpiceJet and Indigo were both eyeing, and even Air India was eyeing the pilots and the cabin crew, and SpiceJet and Indigo were actually eyeing the aircraft itself. Now, the aircraft continue to be under the hold of Go First.
Okay.
So, the lessors cannot stake any claim on it as yet. At the same time, the 11,000 plus crores of debt that Go First has on its books right now need not become an immediate concern for the airline. So, until the insolvency proceedings are through and until the case finally comes to an end on whether Go First continues with its license to fly, whether it continues operations by taking maybe another line of emergency credit guarantee line that the government may offer to them. Until then, we seem to be in a state of coma with Go First. And there is a sigh of relief, obviously, for the airline, because it doesn't have to immediately take care of any of its
debt.
of its debt and its obligations, given the financial crisis that the airline has already stated that it is in. And I think the second point of relief right now for the pilots is that in this moratorium period and until the NCLT proceedings are on, no pilots can be sacked by Go First. So that becomes an important case. Now, I think it's important to understand, can pilots themselves in this period resign and instead of jumping ship, in this case, jump airlines and move on to another airline? Because if you remember, coincidentally, Air India had come with a half-page ad in a couple of pink papers stating that it needs 1,000 odd pilots to service its fleet. Now, the models of aircraft that Air India operates are slightly different, but I think for the pilots, there's a clear-cut fitment with SpiceJet and with Indigo right now. And I've been made to understand, speaking to some pilot friends, that there is a demand for qualified Pratt & Whitney trained pilots who fly the Airbus A380neo to also take on offers from international airlines.
Okay.
So that's where we are at the moment, really.
At the moment, Mr. Wadia, you said that you've been closely involved with NCLT. We understand that Go First is hailing the fact that they have been given a full moratorium. What does that really mean for them? As Karthik rightly explained, it means that there is a sense of status quo at the moment, which means that the liability that Go First has towards its creditors as well as obligations, they are temporarily halted. They do not have to be complied with at this point in time. But what does it mean in general? How long does the NCLT process take?
One second.
Right.
Normally, a pilot will not be familiar with all the NCLT, but just now, Lavasa, you must have heard of Lavasa city, which is in NCLT, and I'm directly involved in the middle of the whole problems. So let me apprise you of the NCLT process. First of all, the NCLT law itself says that the whole process has to be over in 130 days. If it has to be extended, it can go up to 333 days. But the NCLT process in Lavasa has been going on for more than 5 years. And they're not close to a resolution. Also, what you all seem to be happy about, that no action can be taken. Don't forget the RP who's appointed to look after the airline, he has to keep it as a going concern. And the RP, I'm sure, I don't know what his background, I'm sure he's not an aviation person, so he wouldn't understand fundamentals of aviation. So the RP running and keeping so the earlier the problem is resolved, it is better for everyone concerned, including the financial creditors, for the airline, and from the NCLT process. So if it drags on, as many of the NCLT cases have been dragging on, it is not a good sign for anyone at all. So I would have thought myself that the Wadia Group or the owners of Go would have resorted or seen other options if they were available to them instead of being happy with the NCLT process. Because NCLT, they have lost their money in any case. The creditors are likely to lose their money. They have to take a major haircut. And there'll be problems, as there have been problems in the past also, for the staff. Whether it's, no, you're talking of only the pilots, why about the cabin crew, the ground staff, everyone? What are they going to do? If there's a moratorium, yes, a moratorium says that no action can be taken. Like, I cannot sue Go today because there's a moratorium. But what happens in the moratorium? Is the airline going to continue running efficiently as they should be running? So it's not a good sign at all. All this
airline is definitely not taking. Airline is definitely not taking to airs. We know that at this point in time. We were very clear on that. But what we are alluding to, in fact, is that there is some sense of relief for the management and for the employees who seem to have at least their jobs intact for a while. I think something very interesting that Mr. Wadia pointed out here, that NCLT process, although there is a set deadline, can extend. In this case, he pointed out the NCLT proceedings with Lavasa have been on for 5 years. We don't know what's going to be here. But, a concern that perhaps many people who are still employed with Go First, Karthik, is that they haven't got their salaries in a while.
Right.
And they are not being asked to go, but they will stay on, if at all they want to stay on without pay. That does not make much sense.
So as part of the NCLT proceedings, Shweta, there is an emergency deposit of 5 crore rupees right now, which doesn't seem much given the volume of debt that the airline has and the financial crisis that it's in. But about 5 crore rupees are being parked with NCLT to take care of any immediate expenses. Now, would pilot salaries include these emergency expenses or not? I think the tribunal should take that in its wake and understand that, yeah, this is something that must be honored right now. This is not an external vendor you're talking about. This is not a lessor. This is not a creditor you're talking about. And this is something which is vital to keep the airline and its staff alive.
About 5,000 staff.
Till as long as the proceedings are on 130 days, 190 days, whatever it goes up to, perhaps there could be these installments of 5 crore tranches of such amount, which the NCLT can demand of Go First to keep parking with it to take care of these emergency expenses.
Okay.
I'm hoping for that at least.
Okay. Dheeraj Mathur is joining us at this point in time, who's an aviation expert himself. Dheeraj, thanks for taking time out. We've been discussing the future of Go First for a while now, and we've arrived at, to a point where we understand that NCLT process may finish within the stipulated timeline, in which case we may see Go First coming back on airs, but that is very unlikely to happen, and there have been precedences there before. What are your expectations, or what's going to happen with Go First?
Look, this is crystal ball gazing, right? Because you don't have a promoter anymore. So the question is the promoter understanding the aviation business doesn't arise. And in fact, if you recall, our first low-cost carrier was promoted by a pilot himself, and we all know where that went. But frankly speaking, things being what they are, it will be very difficult for Go First to come back on air. Frankly speaking, it's because 50% of the aircraft is still grounded. Now, Pratt & Whitney has indicated that they are going to contest the enforcement of the Singapore Arbitral Award. So you're not getting any engine. So 50% of the aircraft are going to be without engine. And all their costs are, the fixed costs are still there, even if you get the other 50% up and running. But 50% is then going to service crew and craft and all of that 400%. So it's going to be very difficult, even if it manages to resolve the financial issues through some restructuring, etc. But the fundamental operational issues of the engines, until they are resolved, how can they even think of start flying again? Because they still have Pratt & Whitney engines, and I don't know I think Safran probably also makes similar engines, and I believe Indigo and Air India has switched to them. But until the engine issue is resolved, I don't think that it could start off.
Okay. I want to take the last couple of minutes to discuss what's happening with the aviation sector at large. And we here at Newsline have been doing so for a while now. In fact, one of the immediate problems that people, the passengers, have to face is the fact that there is obviously not many choices, and therefore the ticket prices are soaring on very common routes like Delhi-Mumbai, all-time high, about touching around 18 to 20,000, when it was about a week ago, 10 to 12,000. Right. So people are paying through their noses in absence of many players on ground.
So that is bound to happen, Shweta. Unfortunately, or fortunately, see, I'm a huge proponent of free trade and fair market practices. And lesser the government intervention in running businesses, the better it is for industries to flourish and companies, corporations to make profits, as the case may be. But in this case, I think airlines trying to take undue advantage of one player being knocked off the skies seems a tad too much and requires perhaps a little bit of price ceiling to be set and surge pricing to be set by the DGCA. Now, Go First, when it filed on 2nd of May, when it filed for its insolvency proceedings, commanded only a 7.8% market share, right? Now, of course, 7.8% is not a huge market share. It's not even a tenth of the market share. And of course, if you compare it to Indigo, which is about 56%, Air India combined about 26 odd percent. So between Spice and Go First, there's a 7% to 8% division of market share. Now, a 7%, 8% market player being knocked off and prices shooting up by 50%, 60% doesn't seem like profiting, it seems like profiteering. So now, I don't know, is there a room for intervention here? Should DGCA come and on some select sectors put a capping, put a ceiling that is all that is going to cost? But I think the DGCA would find that difficult to implement in any case, because airlines are not in the business of making money historically.
Right.
So if this is an opportunity for them to convert their profits and take them on their books, they are trying to milk the opportunity in the best way possible.
And the right opportune moment for them to milk the opportunity in this case. Mr. Wadia, you know what? One of the big takeaways from our discussion a couple of days ago was that aviation sector, aviation business is anyway not making money, and with one player knocked off the market, it is an opportune window for the remaining players to, you know, the fact that many of these routes were heavily discounted, the fares were heavily discounted, it's now an opportunity for these players to make the money that they've been losing traditionally. Would you agree with that, you know, analysis, or do you think it's about time that Ministry of Civil Aviation and the regulator must intervene to cap prices?
I would agree with you, but that's not my area of expertise. That's a commercial aspect, so I won't comment too much.
Okay.
Let me clarify 2 points which you marked off earlier. One is that you said that they've got 5 crores to handle this issue. Are you aware what the cost of NCLT, just the insolvency process is? To give you an idea, only the process of NCLT in Lavasa case, the fees of the consultants, the legal people, etc., is about 100 crores. So what is 5 crores today? It's peanuts, nothing, and nothing will happen in 5 crores to start with. Secondly, it will be best for everyone. You were talking about, will they let the pilots go or should they go, etc. See, if the Go airline is going to be shut down today or in a period of time, keeping people on the ground serves nobody's interest, neither the pilots nor the airline nor the DGCA. So if people would like to leave the airline, they should be allowed. If the dues are there, yeah, by all means they can take it up with the airline, what their past dues are. But they should all be allowed to leave and join wherever they would want to, because that's legally correct also and morally correct. Otherwise, how long the NCLT process? Suppose it goes on for years and ends. Do you expect the pilots or the engineers to sit on the ground with no jobs? So it is futile to talk about holding on to the staff who are already in Go. Secondly, people may not be aware that the law does not allow the original promoters to take, for example, the promoters of Go, Wadia Group, says tomorrow I want to take back Go Airlines and run it. They are not authorized to do it. They cannot do it. Once it goes into NCLT process, there has to be a process followed till the end. So the process, I'm not going into details, but it's very complicated.
Okay. Okay. Let me get Dheeraj in at this point in time. Dheeraj, you know, I think we've moved away from the fact that, and we were discussing here, price capping with aviation sector at large, and can the regulator intervene, should the regulator intervene? And interesting point there that Mr. Wadia said that the 5 crores set aside by Go First, or the requirement by NCLT, which is to set aside 5 crores, would not be enough to cover cost, at least for the existing pilots, the ground staff that has been employed by Go First. And Go First there has been told to not let go or not start the retrenchment exercise just as yet, to allow the existing staff, crew members to continue working. Do you think that 5 crore would be enough to you know, cover the cost of the 5,000 plus employees who are currently with Go First? And beyond that, do you think for consumers at large, it is important that we start capping prices to ensure that they're not paying through their noses?
Is that question for me?
That is correct, sir. It is for you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. Well, look, I think quite recently the government clarified again on a request from by the parliamentary committee that they would not like to interfere in pricing. So now, you know, so therefore that's something that is, I think, unlikely to happen. I agree as a consumer, a 6,000 rupee ticket costing 24, 25,000 is outrageous. And, it shouldn't happen. But I don't think there's anything the government can do. If it tries to intervene, airlines will say that, look, when we make losses, you don't, though the government has set up a credit line facility, but, so they'll say that, look, when we make losses, we make the losses, and we have to cover them. Even if you're giving us credit, we still have to pay back what we borrow. So as far as capping is concerned, I mean, look, I think what's important for airlines is to understand that pricing has to be rational. You can't have gouging, and you can't have this kind of, which is virtual ripping off. So the pricing has to be rational. I think the airlines that are going to have to exercise some restraint and show that they are sensitive to consumers. But on the other hand, hey, if the market can bear it, that's the price that is going to be that the market will fix. So, I mean, it's a tricky thing. There is no easy answer to this. But the government is unlikely to intervene. That's my view. Now, the second point you raised was about 5 crores is just for the insolvency process. It's not going to be anywhere near close to what it's going to cost to pay the crew, etc. And the vendors, of course, are going to get covered by the IBC process. But the crew and their salaries and so on, if people are leaving, it's best for them to be let go, go get jobs elsewhere. And as and when the airline comes back on track, in fact, it makes no sense for them to keep on a fixed cost when there is absolutely no revenue in sight. Mm-hmm. So, if it was a question of a few weeks, then it's another matter. But right now, there is no clarity at all. I don't see how this thing is going to get resolved quickly. Especially, as I said, with Pratt & Whitney digging in its heels and saying that it's not going to honor the Singapore arbitration award and is going to oppose it in the U.S. Delaware court.
Okay. All right. So not much relief there for Go First, at least in the interim future. Before I let you go, and this is where I think, Karthik, you and I were discussing, specifically with regards to airfare, the idea of an aspirational India and more Indians taking to skies. And I think we disagree, where I feel that the government needs to intervene in order to make the common man realize their dreams of taking to airs. In a country where less than 1% of Indians take to skies or get to fly in their lifetime, there is scope for the aviation sector to grow. But aviation players are not able to stand competition. And we have seen that traditionally, be it Kingfisher, Jet Airways, and now Go First. Where does it bring us? Where do we stand at the moment? And I think we're very far from realizing that dream until, and I know you're a proponent of free market economics, but I sincerely feel that the government needs to do something about it if it has a vision to have a robust aviation sector.
See, I think as long as the demand-supply equilibrium is met, even at 18,000 rupees for a Delhi-Mumbai ticket or a Mumbai-Hyderabad ticket or any common sector that airlines fly to, as long as that equilibrium is maintained, that people are buying tickets even at 18,000 rupees or higher and flights are going with all seats occupied, would there be need for the government to intervene and let airlines discount their potential earning and profitability? I doubt it.
Unlikely to happen. All right, gentlemen, we will keep tracking that story. Mr. Wadia, Dheeraj Mathur, Karthik, thanks very much for joining with your inputs on that very important story.